The phone wouldn't stop vibrating on my kitchen counter. 47 missed calls on Monday, 63 by Wednesday. By Friday morning, the red notification badge on my screen hit 103. Every single buzz sent a small, quiet wave of satisfaction through my chest as I sat in my new apartment, sipping black coffee and watching my old company's digital infrastructure crumble from the outside. 5 days earlier, I had walked out of Apex Technologies with nothing but a cardboard box of personal belongings and a calm smile that seemed to deeply disturb everyone who saw it. My manager, Keith Higgins, had just announced that the Senior Systems Architect promotion, the one I had been working toward for 3 years, was going to someone else. Not just anyone, but Brandon Cole, the office favorite who could not debug a simple script if his life depended on it, but could charm his way into any golf group. I had congratulated Brandon with genuine warmth in my voice, shook his hand, and smiled at Keith. Then I went back to my desk, quietly disabled the automated recovery scripts I had written on my own time that kept our enterprise servers running, left no documentation for my personal workarounds, and handed in my resignation effective immediately. Nobody saw it coming. Nobody understood what they had just lost. Before I tell you how this all unfolded, there is something I want to share. This channel is on a journey to reach 5,000 subscribers, people who appreciate real stories about standing up for your worth without playing dirty or losing your dignity. If that sounds like something you value, please consider clicking the subscribe button. There is no pressure, just an open invitation to join a community of people who believe self-respect is just as important as professional success. My name is Arthur Vance. I am 54 years old. Before last Tuesday, I had spent 8 years of my life at Apex Technologies. I had climbed from a senior developer to the lead systems architect, which basically meant I was the one holding the entire back-end database and server infrastructure, together with custom code and midnight oil. My parents used to run a small, dusty hardware store in a quiet town in Ohio. It was the kind of place where they knew every customer by name. My father would regularly fix lawnmowers for free for neighbors who were struggling, and my mother would slide extra light bulbs or batteries into bags for people who could not quite pay. They never got rich, but they slept well at night. That upbringing taught me a hard lesson that most people in corporate tech seem to forget. You have to see people as human beings first and resources second. I knew what it was like to work twice as hard for half the recognition, and I knew exactly when someone was trying to take my good nature for granted. Keith Higgins was trying to do exactly that, and he had finally pushed me too far. Apex Technologies was a mid-sized software company providing customer relationship management services to about 800 major clients. These were not just social media apps. We hosted data for hospitals, regional banks, and local municipal governments. Server downtime did not just mean a loss of ad revenue. It meant real, severe consequences for real people. That reliability was almost entirely my doing. I designed our current database cluster 3 years ago when the old system started buckling under heavy traffic. I wrote the custom monitoring tools that caught database deadlocks before they could freeze client portals. I created the failover scripts that could bring a crashed node back online in less than 3 minutes instead of 4 hours. My annual performance reviews were always flawless. Keith told me year after year that I was the backbone of the company. But whenever promotion time came around, there was always some convenient excuse. Next quarter, next fiscal year, after the next major migration, I got 3 years of empty promises. Then Brandon Cole joined the team 18 months ago. Brandon was a decent mid-level coder. He could write functional code, but he did not have the instinct to see problems before they happened. What Brandon did have was visibility. He volunteered for every social committee, spoke loudest in every meeting, and played golf with Keith every Saturday morning. I did not hate him for it. Corporate politics is a skill, and Brandon had mastered it. What I did hate was Keith's assumption that playing golf made Brandon a better architect than the man who actually built the system. 6 months ago, Keith called me into his office. He told me he was creating a new senior systems architect role. He said, "Arthur, this role has your name written all over it. Just design the roadmap for our Q3 container migration, and we will make it official." I spent the next 4 months pouring my soul into that project. I worked late nights on my personal laptop, designing a deployment pipeline that would save Apex roughly $300,000 a year in server costs. I documented every detail, created prototype containers, and presented the plan to our CTO, Albert Jenkins. Albert loved it. Keith was thrilled. He shook my hand and promised the formal offer would be ready by the end of the month. That was 6 weeks ago. On Tuesday morning, Keith called a sudden all-hands engineering meeting at 9. We all gathered in the main conference room. Keith stood at the whiteboard, practically beaming with energy. "Team, I have a major announcement," he said. "As we look to the future of our cloud systems, we need a senior systems architect to lead our technical strategy. I am incredibly proud to announce that Brandon Cole will be taking on this new role." The words felt like a sudden splash of ice water. Brandon looked surprised, though he quickly stood up, shook Keith's hand, and gave a polished speech about teamwork and collaboration. I clapped along with everyone else. I kept my face calm, pleasant, and professional, but inside, everything became perfectly clear. After the meeting, Keith tapped my shoulder. "Arthur, do you have a minute?" We stepped into his office and he shut the door. "I know you wanted this role," Keith said, refusing to look me in the eye. "But this is not a reflection of your technical skills. You are brilliant, but the senior role requires soft skills, someone who can manage up to executive leadership and interface with clients." "Brandon has those skills," I nodded slowly. "I understand," I said. And I did. I understood that my 8 years of dedication, my midnight alerts, and my custom scripts were being pushed aside because I did not play golf on Saturdays. "I am glad you are being a team player about this," Keith said, visibly relieved. "The truth is, we need you right where you are. You are the nuts and bolts of this operation. Brandon will handle the high-level strategy, but we need your execution." It was the classic corporate trap. They wanted me to do the senior architect work for a mid-level salary, while Brandon took the title and the credit. I went back to my desk. I did not feel angry. I just felt a quiet mathematical resolve. I opened my personal bank account. I had saved diligently over the years, and I had enough to cover 14 months of living expenses. I checked my LinkedIn. I had 3 unread messages from recruiters. The job market for experienced infrastructure engineers was highly active. I opened a private text editor on my computer. I listed every critical task I performed that no one else knew how to do. The monitoring cron jobs, the custom failover triggers, the caching algorithms. All of these were tools I had built on my own time to make my own job easier using my personal laptop. They were not documented in the official company repositories because Keith had never prioritized documentation. I decided it was time to step back. I went into the system configuration files. I did not delete anything. Sabotage is illegal, and I had no intention of breaking the law. I simply disabled my custom automated scripts. I turned off the cron jobs that checked for database deadlocks and restarted failed server services. I reverted the database settings to their standard defaults, the way they were before I optimized them. The system would run fine under normal traffic, but the moment a database deadlock occurred, or a server node hiccuped, there would be no automation to fix it. It would require manual intervention from someone who knew what they were doing. Then I wrote a simple, 1-paragraph resignation letter. I stated that I was resigning effective immediately, and that I was forfeiting my 2 weeks of notice salary as allowed by my contract. I walked into Keith's office and handed it to him. His face drained of color as he read it. "Arthur, what is this? You cannot just leave immediately. We have the Q3 migration starting next week." "I am resigning, Keith," I said quietly. "My contract allows for immediate departure if I forfeit 2 weeks' pay, which I have already cleared with HR." "This is completely unprofessional," Keith stammered. "After everything we have done for you." I smiled. I packed my books, my Ohio hardware store coffee mug, and my keyboard into a single box. By 2:15 on Tuesday afternoon, I was driving out of the parking lot, feeling lighter than I had in years. The first call came at 8:15 on Wednesday morning. It was Keith. I was sitting on my balcony, watching the morning traffic and enjoying a hot cup of tea. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. I did not listen to it immediately. I wanted to enjoy my morning. Half an hour later, Keith called again. Then another call came from a number I recognized as Natalie, the HR director. By Wednesday afternoon, Keith had called 5 times. Natalie had called twice. Around 4, my phone buzzed with a call from Albert Jenkins, our CTO. That was highly unusual. Albert was the kind of executive who lived in boardrooms and spreadsheets. He barely knew my name, despite the fact that my engineering work had kept his technical department from collapsing for years. I let his call go to voicemail, too. I did not feel any anger or malice. I just felt a deep sense of peace. That evening, I walked down to a small, family-owned Italian restaurant in my neighborhood. I ordered a plate of fresh pasta and a glass of red wine. I sat there for 2 hours, eating slowly, reading a book, and not looking at my phone once. I went home and slept for 9 hours straight. It was the deepest, most restful sleep I had experienced in 3 years. On Thursday, the pressure started to build. Keith called 7 times, Natalie called 4 times, Albert called twice, then a new number appeared on my screen. I did not recognize it, but I suspected it was Keith calling from a personal cell phone or another team member's desk. I did not block the numbers. I just kept my phone on silent, letting the logs pile up. I spent Thursday afternoon at a quiet coffee shop updating my resume. I had not touched it in years. I listed my projects at Apex, specifically highlighting how I had stabilized their database cluster and improved their uptime metrics from 94% to 99.7%. I sent the updated resume to 3 recruiters who had messaged me on LinkedIn over the past month. Within 2 hours, all 3 replied. One of them, a recruiter named Sarah, told me she had an immediate opening for a principal systems architect at Zenith Solutions. Zenith was Apex's direct competitor, but they had a reputation for having a much healthier work environment and paying significantly better. She wanted to set up an interview for Monday morning. I told her I was ready. On Thursday evening, Brandon Cole texted me. We had never texted before, but he had my number from an old emergency contact list. "Hey Arthur," Brandon wrote. "I hope you are doing okay. The team is running into a few configuration questions on the migration project. Keith mentioned you had done some custom automation on the production database. I would love to buy you coffee tomorrow morning and chat about it. No pressure at all, just wanted to connect." I read the text, but I did not reply. Brandon was not a bad person, but he was out of his depth. He had accepted a senior role without understanding the technical reality of what he was supposed to manage. Friday morning was when the real panic set in at Apex. I woke up, made breakfast, and finally decided to check my voicemails. I had 47 notifications waiting for me. I clicked on Keith's message from 8 that morning. "Arthur, it is Keith. Look, I think we got off on the wrong foot on Tuesday. I was stressed about the Q3 timeline. Let's sit down and talk. The company is willing to bring you back as a consultant. I am authorized to offer you a rate of $200 an hour to help us document and troubleshoot the server configurations. Please call me back as soon as you get this." I did the math in my head. My previous salary broke down to roughly $62 an hour. Now that they were in a bind, my hourly value had suddenly tripled. The next message was from Albert Jenkins, the CTO. His voice was tense and controlled, but I could hear the undercurrent of anxiety. "Arthur, this is Albert. We are experiencing some performance degradation on our primary database cluster. Some of our municipal clients are reporting slow response times. We need to speak urgently regarding the system's architecture. Please call my direct line." Natalie's message was more formal but equally urgent. She wanted to schedule an immediate exit interview and discuss a transition agreement, hinting at a separation bonus if I agreed to a formal knowledge transfer. I deleted the messages, put on my running shoes, and went for a 5-mile run in the park. By Friday afternoon, the situation had escalated. A recruiter from Zenith Solutions called to confirm my interview for Monday at 10. The salary range was a $190,000 base plus a 20% bonus and equity. That was 58% more than my salary at Apex. As I was cooking dinner on Friday evening, my phone rang. The caller ID showed my own old office desk number. Someone was sitting in my chair using my old phone, trying to access my local workstation files. I let it ring. A moment later, a text message from Keith came through. "Arthur, please," the text read. "We have multiple clients down. The hospital database in Cleveland is throwing timeout errors. People are being affected. I know you are a good man and you care about doing the right thing. Help us out here and we can discuss whatever you want. Name your terms." I stood in my kitchen, reading the message. I did care about doing the right thing. That was why I had worked 60-hour weeks for years. I had kept those systems running because I knew patients, bank customers, and ordinary citizens relied on them. But I had also done the right thing by my employer, and they had repaid that loyalty by treating me as an invisible utilities. The systems were not failing because I had sabotaged them. I had not deleted a single line of code. They were failing because the infrastructure was fundamentally fragile, and I was no longer there to manually fix the database deadlocks that occurred every Friday during heavy data syncs. The automated scripts I built were my personal tools, written on my own time. I had simply turned them off. I did not reply to Keith. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the couch with a book. The phone continued to buzz. By midnight on Friday, the red badge on my screen hit 103 missed calls. Saturday morning was quiet. No calls came before 9. I assumed the engineering team had worked through the night to manually resolve the database lockups. They had probably patched it up, but it was a temporary fix. At 10:15, my phone rang again. It was Albert Jenkins. I decided it was time to talk. I answered the call. "Good morning, Albert," I said. "Arthur, thank you for answering," Albert began. His voice was tired and I could hear the background noise of a busy office, even though it was Saturday morning. "I will get straight to the point. We had a massive infrastructure failure yesterday. 17 of our largest clients, including the Regional Medical Center in Cleveland, experienced hours of database timeouts. Our engineering team has been working for 18 hours straight trying to patch the system. They tell me the automated recovery scripts that used to handle these issues are gone." "They are not gone," I explained calmly. "The code is still there. I simply disabled the cron jobs that ran my personal monitoring scripts. Those scripts were written on my own time, on my personal laptop, to help me manage the servers. They were never part of the company's official codebase." A long silence followed. When Albert spoke again, his tone was softer. "Arthur, I have to apologize. I did not realize how much you were doing behind the scenes. Keith assured me that the systems were fully automated and that Brandon could handle the transition easily. That was my mistake. As CTO, I should have looked closer. I want to make this right. We want you to return to Apex." "In what role?" I asked. "We can offer you the senior systems architect position immediately. We will give you a 30% raise, a signing bonus, and you will report directly to me, not to Keith. A week ago, that would have been my dream offer. But the landscape had changed. I have an interview on Monday morning for a principal architect position at Zenith Solutions," I replied. Albert did not hesitate. "We can match that. Principal systems architect. A 40% raise. You will report directly to me. You will have your own budget, and you will be Brandon's senior. Keith's management decisions are currently under executive review. I need you back, Arthur. We cannot afford another outage like yesterday. I need time to think about it, Albert." "I will give you my decision on Monday morning," I said, and then I hung up. I spent Saturday afternoon trying to process the offer. It was complete vindication. The company that had ignored me for years was now begging me to return on my own terms. But as I was sitting on my couch, my phone rang again. It was Dennis, one of the senior database administrators still at Apex. "Arthur, you won't believe what is happening here," Dennis whispered, speaking quickly. "Keith is in a complete panic. He is telling the legal team that the company owns all your custom monitoring scripts. He actually produced a signed intellectual property assignment agreement from last year, claiming you transferred all rights to the automation tools to Apex." My blood ran cold. I had never signed any such document. I had been very careful to keep my personal automation tools on my own hardware, running them as local scripts rather than committing them to the company repository. Precisely because I knew Apex had a habit of claiming ownership over employee side projects. "Are you sure?" I asked. "Yes," Dennis said. "The legal team is reviewing it right now. Keith is using it to justify having the team force-enable your scripts." I immediately called my attorney, Roger, who had handled my parents' business contracts for years. Roger was a sharp, no-nonsense lawyer from Columbus. I explained the situation to him. Within an hour, Roger sent an official letter to Apex Technologies' general counsel, demanding to see the signed agreement. By Saturday evening, a PDF copy of the document was forwarded to my email. I opened the file on my laptop. It was a standard corporate IP assignment form. At the bottom was my signature. But it did not take a forensic expert to see what had happened. The signature was a scanned image, slightly tilted, pasted onto the signature line. It was a direct copy of the signature from my original employment contract from 8 years ago. The date next to it was backdated to November of last year. Roger looked at it and laughed over the phone. "This is a clumsy forgery, Arthur. In the state of California, where Apex is headquartered, this is a direct violation of California Penal Code Section 470, which is a criminal offense. Furthermore, because this document is forged, it is void from the beginning. It has no legal standing. What does that mean for my code?" I asked. "It means they have absolutely no right to use your automation scripts. If they attempt to run them or copy them into their main repository, they are committing federal copyright infringement under Title 17, Section 106 of the United States Code. We can shut down their entire database operation with an immediate injunction. and we can file criminal charges against Keith Higgins. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. The trap was set. Keith, in his desperation to save his job and cover up his incompetence, had committed a felony. And by trying to use my forged agreement to force enable my scripts, Apex Technologies was about to walk into a federal copyright lawsuit. I had the ultimate leverage. I did not need to return to Apex to get my revenge. The law was already on my side, and Keith had handed me the weapon to destroy his career. I slept very well on Saturday night. On Sunday morning, I drove down to Ohio to visit my parents. We sat in their backyard, and I told them about the offer from Albert and the forged document. My father listened quietly, cleaning a pair of brass garden shears. "Arthur," my father said, looking up. "There is a big difference between being needed and being valued. When a company needs you, they will do anything to keep you from leaving, even lie and cheat. But when they value you, they treat you with respect before you have to threaten them. That place is rotten. If you go back, you will just be helping them hide the rot." My mother nodded in agreement. "You have your self-respect, Arthur. Don't sell it back to the people who stole it." I knew they were right. Returning to Apex, even as a principal architect reporting to the CTO, would mean working in a toxic environment where managers forge documents to cover their mistakes. On Monday morning, I put on my best suit. I was not going to Apex. I was heading to Zenith Solutions. The offices of Zenith Solutions were located in a modern, glass-fronted building downtown. Unlike the dark, cramped cubicles at Apex, the workspace here was bright, open, and filled with natural light. I was met in the lobby by Autumn Clark, the VP of Engineering, and Ryan Park, the Director of Infrastructure. The interview did not feel like a test. It felt like a conversation between peers. We spent 2 hours discussing system design, database replication, and how to scale cloud resources efficiently. Ryan was particularly interested in my database clustering techniques, asking insightful questions about how I had managed to keep server latency so low. "We have been following your career for a while, Arthur," Autumn said toward the end of the meeting. "The uptime metrics at Apex during your 8 years there were remarkable. You took a system that was crashing 4 times a month and made it one of the most stable databases in our market. We want that kind of expertise here. We are prepared to offer you the principal systems architect role, starting at $190,000 a year, with a 20% annual bonus target, company equity, and 4 weeks of paid time off." I was stunned. The base salary alone was 58% higher than what I was earning at Apex, and the overall package was far more generous than anything Albert Jenkins had proposed. "I appreciate the offer," I said. "I do have a counter-offer from my previous employer, and I promised them a decision by the end of the day." Autumn nodded understandingly. "We know you are in high demand. We would love to have you on board, but take the day to make the right choice for yourself." While I was driving back from the interview, my lawyer, Roger, was sending the official legal notice to the general counsel at Apex Technologies. The letter was a masterpiece of legal precision. It laid out the evidence of the forgery, showing side-by-side scans of my signature from my 2018 employment contract and the fake IP agreement. It cited California Penal Code Section 470, detailing the criminal penalties for forgery. It also stated that any attempt by Apex to run my custom automation scripts would be considered a direct violation of federal copyright law under Title 17, Section 106 of the United States Code. The notice demanded that Apex immediately delete all copies of my scripts from their servers, terminate Keith Higgins for fraud, and pay a settlement fee of $50,000 for the unauthorized use of my property. If they did not comply by 5 that afternoon, we would file a federal copyright lawsuit and report the forgery to the police. The reaction from Apex was instantaneous. At 2 my phone rang. It was Albert Jenkins. His voice was no longer tense and controlled. He sounded completely panicked. "Arthur, we received the letter from your attorney," Albert said, his breathing shallow. "I want you to know that I had absolutely no idea about the agreement being forged. Keith presented it to me as a legitimate document. I would never condone document forgery." "I believe you, Albert," I replied. "But Keith is your manager. He represented the company when he committed a felony to cover his own mistakes." "Keith has been suspended immediately," Albert said quickly. "We are initiating formal termination proceedings for gross misconduct. We are also deleting the scripts from our database cluster right now. Our engineers are reverting the servers to manual control. We will pay the settlement fee. Please, Arthur, ask your lawyer to hold off on filing the lawsuit." A federal copyright dispute would ruin our reputation with our enterprise clients. I listened to him speak, and for the first time in years, I felt the heavy burden of Apex Technologies lift from my shoulders. The company that had taken my labor for granted, that had expected me to work in the shadows while Brandon Cole took the spotlight, was now pleading with me to spare them from public ruin. I will talk to my attorney, I said. If the settlement is paid and the code is deleted, we will not file the lawsuit. But I will not be returning to Apex. Arthur, please, Albert said, a note of desperation in his voice. We can increase the salary. Name your price. We need your leadership. I am sorry, Albert, I said. But my father once told me there is a difference between being needed and being valued. You need me now because your servers are failing and you are facing a lawsuit. But you never valued me when I was keeping the lights on. I hung up the phone. I called Roger and told him to accept the settlement terms once the funds were verified. Then I called Autumn Clark at Zenith Solutions. Autumn, I said, I would be honored to accept your offer. Excellent, she replied, and I could hear the genuine warmth in her voice. Welcome to the team, Arthur. I think you are going to do great things here. I spent the rest of Monday afternoon sitting on my balcony, watching the sunset. The phone did not ring. The 103 missed calls were a thing of the past. The corporate drama was over, and a new chapter was about to begin. The 3 weeks between jobs were a revelation. For the first time in 8 years, I woke up without checking server alerts on my phone. I spent my days walking in the park, visiting my parents, and reading books that had sat on my shelf for years. I realized how much of my life I had sacrificed for a company that had tried to steal my work. I was not just recovering physically, I was rebuilding my sense of self-worth. My first day at Zenith Solutions was everything Apex was not. Autumn Clark personally welcomed me at the front door. She took me on a tour of the building, introducing me to everyone we passed. When we reached the infrastructure team, Ryan Park gathered the 8 engineers together. He introduced me as their new principal architect, and the team applauded. They looked genuinely excited to have me there. My workstation was fully prepared. There was a welcome package with a handwritten note from the CEO. These were small details, but they communicated a clear message. I was valued, not just needed. During my first month, I identified 3 major bottlenecks in Zenith's deployment pipeline. I presented a project proposal to Ryan, expecting the usual corporate resistance and budgeting arguments. Instead, Ryan smiled and approved it immediately. We have the budget, he said. I will assign 2 junior engineers to help you implement this. Let me know if you need anything else. We want this system to succeed. The contrast was staggering. At Apex, I had to beg for every hour of developer support. At Zenith, they were asking what resources they could give me to make my job easier. Within 4 weeks, we had implemented the first phase of the upgrades. Deployment times dropped by 30%, and the on-call team was getting paged 40% less frequently. At the end of my second month, Autumn called me into her office. Arthur, we are planning to expand our infrastructure engineering department, she said. Ryan is moving into a director role for platform engineering, and we want to promote you to director of infrastructure. You will manage the entire operations team and lead our cloud scaling strategy director. At Apex, that title would have taken another 5 years of political maneuvering. Here, it was offered to me before my probationary period was even finished. My skill set had not changed. I was the same engineer I was a month ago. The only difference was the environment. 2 years later, Zenith Solutions went public. The equity I had been granted was now worth enough to pay off my mortgage. More importantly, I was now the VP of Infrastructure, managing a global team of 43 engineers across 3 continents. We had built one of the most reliable cloud architectures in the industry, regularly featured in technical case studies. About 6 months after starting at Zenith, I ran into Brandon Cole at a regional technology conference. He spotted me near the exhibition hall and walked over, holding a cup of coffee. Arthur, it is great to see you, Brandon said, looking slightly nervous. How are you, Brandon? I asked. I am doing well, he said. I actually left Apex about 4 months ago. Really? I asked. Yeah, Brandon sighed. After you left, it was a disaster. Keith had promised the CTO that we could handle the Q3 migration without you. But when the automated systems were disabled, nobody knew how to handle the database replication errors. The system kept crashing. When the legal department discovered Keith had forged your signature on that IP agreement, they fired him immediately for gross misconduct. It was a mess. What about you? I asked. I tried to manage the team, Brandon said honestly. But I was in over his head. I realized I am not built for deep systems engineering. I ended up resigning and took a technical sales role at a software startup. I love it. I get to talk to clients all day, and I don't have to touch database clusters. He looked at me directly, his expression sincere. Arthur, I want to apologize. I got a promotion that belonged to you, and Keith treated you terribly. I did not realize what was happening at the time, but looking back, you got screwed. I am sorry. I appreciated his honesty. Brandon was never the villain. He was just an opportunist caught in a broken system. I appreciate you saying that, Brandon, I replied, but don't worry about it. Leaving Apex was the best thing that ever happened to my career. We shook hands, wished each other luck, and parted ways. There was no anger left in me. On the second anniversary of my departure from Apex, my team at Zenith threw a surprise celebration in the conference room. They had ordered a large chocolate cake with white frosting. Written on it in red letters were the words, 2 years of not answering their calls. The story of my 103 missed calls had become a legendary piece of team folklore. Speech! Ryan Park shouted from the back. I laughed, stepping to the front of the room. I looked at the faces of the engineers I had hired, trained, and worked alongside. 2 years ago, I was at a company where I was essential but completely invisible, I said. I worked late nights, built custom tools, and watched other people take the credit. I was loyal to a fault, and that loyalty was never returned. Walking away was the hardest decision of my career, but it taught me a valuable lesson. The room was silent as I spoke. Your value does not change based on whether people recognize it, I continued. What changes is whether you are in a place that allows that value to grow or a place that takes you for granted. I am incredibly proud of what we have built here at Zenith, but I am even more proud of the culture we have created. I promise you that as long as I am leading this team, your contributions will be seen, your growth will be supported, and you will never have to choose between your self-respect and your career. The room erupted in applause. As I walked back to my office that evening, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a message from Autumn. Dinner next week? Want to discuss our Q4 cloud expansion budget. No pressure, just want to make sure you have everything you need. I smiled and replied, absolutely. This was what it meant to be valued. If this story resonated with you, if you have ever been the engineer keeping the servers running while someone else got the spotlight, remember that you don't have to settle. The subscribe button is right there. This channel is built for professionals who know that self-respect and career success go hand in hand. Thanks for listening, and go build something great.